Okay.
I'll just keep letting folks in, and I think we could.
All right. Well, I'll just say a few things while people keep coming in. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We have some great information coming to us from Judy Calman. First, I wanted to announce just a couple of upcoming events and things that are happening right now. For one, just this morning, several board members were out at the Bayard Public Library chatting about birds, which is great to hear. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that was there. Feel free. Anybody wants to?
Yeah, the program went very well. The attendance was a little small, but it turned out that the schools were in session, so the kids didn't come out, but all the displays and the program were very well received, the handouts and everything. And I will say that Sonia Dixon, the librarian, mentioned that we might want to do this as an after-school thing because she sees birds there, a lot of birds at like 4:30. So
That's great.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, other people could say certainly Heidi was there too. We had as many volunteers as attendees, but everybody was enthusiastic about it.
Oh, cool. Just presence. The presence there is great. So thanks for going.
Yeah.
And, December 10th is Victorian Christmas. Emily's gonna staff a table there again. I don't know if she's online yet. Emily, are you there? She might not be, but
Emily, yeah, so
at 11, and she's probably going to be doing some sort of wildlife crafty situation. So, and I think she was looking for a couple volunteers for that. So you can get in touch with her. And the 17th is the Christmas bird count and annual potluck. So that's a great event. Everybody loves that one. Get in touch if you haven't already. And also, as usual, our board meets every other month. Our next one is December, the first Monday in December. And if anybody's welcome to attend to see what we're chatting about or ways to get involved, or just if you want to see what it's all about, feel free to attend. And you can email the SWNM Audubon at gmail.org email address for that info. But Judy Calman is our speaker tonight. She is the Director of Policy for Audubon Southwest. She's based in Albuquerque, and she holds a Juris Doctorate from UNM and Master's in Environmental Policy from Vermont Law School. We're so happy to have her here and meet her and have her share some info with us tonight. She's also the mother of twin baby boys. So big kudos and thanks for taking the time out of your Friday evening. I know it's probably not so easy, but thank you, Judy.
I have a really nice husband. It's fine.
That's awesome. Very supportive, I guess.
He's okay.
Yeah.
We actually recently did like a really awesome sleep training program, which was like a gentle sleep training, and it made bedtime go in like 5 minutes. So
wow.
It's actually gotten much easier for us to put the babies to bed by ourselves in the last couple of weeks. So it's easier today than it would have been like a month ago. So that's good.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll let you go ahead and talk. I'm running the PowerPoint controls, so hopefully there's not much delay, but I'm taking cues from Judy when the advanced slides, just so everybody knows.
Okay. So I'll just tell you when to switch slides. Is that okay? Okay. Sorry, we have to do it this way. I'm having a little bit of a computer problem, so Megan's gonna run the slides for me. So, hi everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Judy. I don't know I can't see actually who's here and who isn't. I can see some of them, but I don't know if I've met any of you before, but it's nice to meet you in Zoom land. So I have been at Audubon for, let's see, just about 3 years now, since right before COVID. And for the 10 years before that, I was the staff attorney at the New Mexico Wilderness Alliance. And so I was working mostly on federal public land stuff. And I worked then with John Hayes in some coalition work. And then he convinced me to switch over to Audubon. And so I've been here ever since, doing all of our state legislature work. They really were interested in kind of building up the policy work that Audubon was doing in New Mexico. They didn't have a policy person before I came on board. And so John Hayes, as the executive director for what was then Audubon New Mexico, he was doing all the policy work himself and wasn't really able to do a lot of it. And so we just weren't really participating in the state legislature stuff. And that's my favorite thing in the world. I'm a weirdo and I like the Roundhouse and I like being up there and working on stuff like that. And so it's been really great. And I've gotten to sort of build out the Audubon state policy program, which has been really awesome. So I thought what I would do tonight, and hopefully this works for everybody, is just kind of give a primer on the New Mexico State Legislature. I know it's really confusing for people who aren't up there all the time. It's also confusing for people who are up there all the time. So I thought people would want sort of a basic introduction to how it works up there. I'm also going to kind of walk through the legislature's website so that people have a basic understanding about where to find information on it if you're looking for it. And then I can talk a little bit about some of the policy work that we've done the last couple of years, and then some of the policy work that we're working on now for the next year or two. So with that, I think we can move to the next slide, as long as that sounds good to everybody, which I'm just going to assume it does. Okay, so go ahead, Megan, somehow.
Sorry, I'm trying.
No, it's okay. There's not that many slides, so we won't have to do this.
Oh, there we go.
Yay. Okay. So the structure of the New Mexico State Legislature, I just wanted to get this out of the way. It's kind of a state, I mean, people probably know this, and I'm sorry if it's reviewed for people, but it's sort of a state level version of the federal system. So the legislature is like Congress, there's a House, there's a Senate. The governor is like the president. She can sign or veto bills that the legislature passes. It kind of works the same way. There's committees in the state legislature the same way that there are committees in Congress. In New Mexico, so every state legislature is totally different, but here we have 112 members total. We have 70 members in the House and 42 members in the Senate. The Democrats hold very large majorities in both chambers, which is good when you're talking about birds. And hold on one second, I got to get to my own notes. One thing I would note is that those numbers look really big for Democrats, which generally means good policy for environmental issues. But there are different kinds of Democrats and different kinds of Republicans. And that's true in New Mexico too. We actually have some Republicans that will co-sponsor environmental legislation with Democrats, which is great. We're working on a huge bill right now, which is bipartisan, which is awesome. And when we can do that, we like to do that. There are also some very, very conservative Democrats who generally vote with the Republicans. And so even though that looks like a very large majority for Democrats, it's not usually that clear cut, especially for environmental bills. But we can talk a little bit more about that later. The reason that there's a 1 in both, so it says 45 Democrats, 24 Republicans, and 1 declined to state. So there's 1 independent in the House right now. That's Phelps Anderson, who incidentally is an Audubon member. He's awesome. He's from Roswell. And then in the Senate, there is 1 open seat right now. So that's the 1. So it's 26 Democrats, 15 Republicans, and 1 empty seat. People might have heard about Jacob Candelaria resigning his seat from the state Senate. So that one should be filled sometime in the next month or two before the session. So that's why there's 3 numbers in each of those. Okay, we can keep going. So I did want to note, this is the leadership in the legislature. So these 5 people right now basically hold 90% of the power, I would say. So these are people that it's really important to know, and really great if these are your legislators, which if all of you are in Silver City, none of these people are your legislator, but that's okay. But on the upper left is Peter Worth. He's the Senate Majority Leader. In the middle is Senator George Munoz. He's the chair of Senate Finance. That's a really critical position because the entire budget goes through him. On the upper right is Senator Mimi Stewart, who is the Senate President Pro Tem. So she's the person who puts people on committees and kind of decides which bills are going to which committees, which can be a really important decision, which I can also get into in a minute. The bottom left is Brian Egoff, who is the Speaker of the House. He is leaving at the end of this term, so there will be a new Speaker of the House in this coming legislative session. So that will be kind of a power play that happens in our state house, and I don't know how that's going to go. That happens right at the beginning of the session. So they'll decide that amongst themselves. The whole House votes on the Speaker for the House. It's not just the Democrats because they're in the majority. So whoever becomes Speaker needs to get a majority vote of the whole House, not just their party. So it'll be interesting. And then in the bottom right is Representative Patty Lundstrom. She's up here because she's the chair of the House Appropriations Committee. So she is in charge of the budget for the House. And basically any bill that passes, unless it's like a purely policy bill, which almost nothing is, pretty much every bill has some money attached to it in some way. Either you're requesting a position be filled at an agency, or you're just requesting money for a program or something. And so if it has any money in it at all, it has to go through Senator Munoz and Representative Lundstrom. And so those 2 legislators are pretty critical to talk to if you want to get anything passed. So those are the people over there. Our legislature is a little unique, like everything in New Mexico. We do not have a legislative session that often. So every other year we're in session for 30 days, and every other year we're in session for 60 days. That's much shorter than the vast majority of states. Our 30-day sessions are just to pass a budget, so they don't consider bills that change policy during those sessions. So basically, odd years, which are long sessions, if you want to consider 60 days a long session, though that's your only option to like really change something big about a program. So this coming year is 2023. That's an odd year, so it's a long session. So it will run from the 3rd Tuesday in January, when they always start, until 60 days after that. 60 days is a really short time to get anything passed, even if it's not a huge policy bill. So trying to pass big policy bills is really difficult. So what it ends up meaning is that it often takes many tries over many sessions to get any big policy changes passed in New Mexico. So just to give you an example, Representative Gail Chasey, who's one of my favorite people in the whole world, who's a representative from Nob Hill in Albuquerque, it took her 10 years to pass the bill to get rid of the death penalty in New Mexico, and she introduced it every year. And she did it. I mean, she got a little bit more support every time. And that's just kind of how we use our sessions, is we use those years to kind of have the discussion, socialize the issue, talk about it publicly, talk about it in committees, and eventually, hopefully, it gets enough support over time to pass. So a lot of the things that we work on work the same way. And so some of the policy things that I'll talk about a little bit later, we've been working on forever. One of the projects I'm still working on, I started working on like 12 years ago at the New Mexico Wilderness Alliance, and I brought it to Audubon, and I'm still working on it. So it's an exercise in patience working at the legislature, which I know is frustrating for people who want to just participate as volunteers too. So we can talk about that a little bit later too. They have what are called, and if I'm going too fast or if I say something confusing, please stop me. I'm happy to stop. Or put it in the chat and I'll respond or something. So the legislature has standing committees and interim committees. So standing committees are the committees that happen during session. So that's when like you have an actual bill that's been introduced and it's getting passed through committees in order to get to the floor of whatever chamber the committee's in. But they also have interim committees, which some of you have probably attended. Those are during the year. So during the year, the legislature has combined House and Senate committees that are topic-based. So they have like an interim water and natural resources committee, which is made up of House members and Senate members. All those interim committees, there's a criminal justice one, there's a tax one, there's the finance committee, and they all travel around the state all during the year, about once a month. So they have maybe 4 or 5 interim committee meetings for each committee around the state during the year so that they can hear presentations, hear budget requests from agencies, and also just talk to constituents. And so a lot of our work happens in the interim just because the legislative sessions are so short. So we go to those interim committees, and a lot of citizens do too, just to talk to legislators. But that's when the legislators really learn about possible policy priorities from groups like ours or from any groups. And it's where they sort of hear the state of the agencies, what's happening around New Mexico. It gives them a chance to go on field trips and kind of see what's happening on the ground in places where they're funding projects and whatever they want to do. So those are like really, really important. When I first started working at the legislature, I kind of didn't understand that, 60% of their work happens during the year at those meetings. And if they haven't heard about a potential policy priority during the year, and they just hear about it for the first time during the session, they're like totally thrown for a loop. Like you kind of have to tell them 6 or 8 months before the session starts in one of those committees in order for them not to be kind of blindsided by the idea during the session. So that's the other important thing to note, is that when you're interested in passing something, you really have to start it like almost as soon as one session ends for the next session. So you really kind of have to plan out what you're doing. I did write on this slide that some of you are more powerful than others, because like I said, if one of these people is your legislator, these legislators have a lot more power than other legislators. And so if you happen to be the constituent of somebody who's either a committee chair or one of these people, it's kind of, you have a heavier hammer, I guess, and more power to possibly influence what's happening. So yeah, none of these people are my legislator either, for what it's worth. So I'm out of luck also. So, okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, I think I did some of this already. Do you guys know this cartoon? The Schoolhouse Rock cartoon?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, it's important. I have the YouTube link linked at the bottom of this presentation, but it's pretty accurate actually. So we talked about this a little bit, but when a bill becomes a law, it's like years and years of work. And then once you do the years and years of work, you introduce the bill. And then once the bill is introduced during the session, it has to make its way through committees. During all those committees, it probably gets amended. And then it has to get voted on again. And then it goes to more committees. And then you have to go to the floor of that chamber. And then you have to do it all again in the other chamber. And then once you do it in both chambers, you have to make sure that the version that each chamber passed is the same version, because they've both been amending it the whole time. So then you might have to do something called concurrence, which is where you take both versions and you go to the floor of the chambers and you agree on which changes you're going to accept and pass it all over again. And then the governor has the option of vetoing it. And so every single one of those steps requires advocacy, because you have to follow that bill from like thought till it's signed. And so that's where lobbying comes into play. That's where citizen advocacy comes into play. And it happens at every single one of those steps. So I just kind of wanted to note how complicated it is, which should not deter anybody from participating, but it is good to know that there's a lot of steps. Okay, we can go to the next one. Am I too dark? Should I turn the light on in my room? Is this okay?
I think you're fine.
Okay. It's getting dark where I am. So another reason that New Mexico is unique is we have the last citizen legislature in the country. And so New Mexico is the last state legislature that does not pay its legislators. So almost all of our legislators have some other source of income. Some of them are retired, but a lot of them work. And so they, they're teachers, they're lawyers, they're police officers. Representative Andrea Romero is finishing law school right now. She's been in law school the last 3 years that she's been a legislator. Also, I went to law school with Gail Chasey when she was a legislator and decided to go to law school in her 60s, which is amazing. And so we were there together. And so they get a per diem when they're in session or when they're doing interim committees, but they don't have a salary. And we're the last state that does that. I think it's to our detriment that we don't pay them. Actually, we pay every other elected official in New Mexico. We pay county commissioners and city councilors and everybody else, but for whatever reason, we don't pay our legislature. It would require a constitutional amendment to fix it. So maybe that's why we haven't done it, but it is a little crazy. And the other thing that's weird about them is they don't have staff. So they have staff during the session. They each have a staff person, and a couple of the people who are in those leadership positions do have staff during the year, but the average legislator does not. And so they do not have time to learn everything about everything. And that means, in a way, it's good for advocates because they sort of rely on us for information, but also, they're relying on people we'd rather them not rely on for information too. And, it creates this really informal and interesting dynamic at the legislature where they come to us for information a lot because they just, honestly, sometimes in a long session, there's 2,000 bills, literally, that get introduced. They don't have time to read them all and learn them all. And they're not always on committees that address those issues during the interim or during the session. And so they're kind of in a weird spot. And, some of them have expertise in one area, but nobody has expertise in all areas that a legislature is trying to legislate on. So in a way, I like it that way because we get to have this really interesting back and forth with them where they come to our meetings and we go to their meetings, and they need the advocacy community to kind of help them navigate the process as much as we need it. But it's a little crazy when you think about it that they have nobody helping them. So that's a weird thing about New Mexico. It does offer complete accessibility. If anybody's ever been up to the Roundhouse, you'll know it's extremely informal. You can walk onto the Senate floor. These are my friends who are talking to a state senator on the Senate floor about gun issues. I don't think that happens in any other state capital either, where you can just walk onto the floor of the legislature and talk to legislators. It has its ups and downs. I don't know, but it's interesting. The other interesting thing about New Mexico is that we have actually very few environmental laws on the books. So we have some, but not a lot. There's a lot that's been left kind of unlegislated and up to agencies. So I can talk about that a little bit more later too. Okay, next slide. So I don't know how interested people are in lobbying and starting to lobby themselves, but sort of everyone in New Mexico can be an advocate and a lobbyist because things are so informal here and because legislators are just normal members of your community. And so here, lobbying in New Mexico is just about relationship building and becoming friends. Is maybe not the right word, but you should go meet your legislator and tell them who you are and tell them what you care about. And most legislators, regardless of party, do want to hear from their constituents. You know, even if you are not the same party as your legislator, they probably still want to talk to you, just because New Mexico is so small and the pool of people who actually are involved is even smaller. So I got a question in the chat, so I'm going to look at it. Hold on. Yes, so there's a question in the chat about being a 501c3, which are not allowed to lobby, but you can advocate and educate, and asking what the distinction is between lobbying and advocating. So what I was always told was that even a 501c3 can spend 20% of their time lobbying and not violate their 501c3 status. But that's kind of a separate, like, do you really want to do that question? But I think legally, you actually could lobby a little bit without violating your status. But yes, I mean, like, the way Audubon works is Audubon does have a C4. I am a registered lobbyist for Audubon. And so I'm doing official lobbying for Audubon, but I'm doing it sort of under their C4 arm. So if you work for an organization that has a C4 in addition to a C3, you can sort of split your work that way, or split your time that way. But like I said, I think you can do a certain amount of lobbying, but it's true. So lobbying, as far as I remember, the definition of lobbying is talking to a decision maker about an actual bill that they have to make a decision about. So it's not telling them, you know, about a water issue in general. That's not lobbying. It's not talking about what needs to change about water. That's not lobbying. Lobbying is saying, I want you to vote yes on SB 76. And this is why. Like, that would be lobbying, but saying, hey, this water issue in New Mexico is a big problem and this would fix it, that's not lobbying. So you can kind of tailor how you talk to them so that you're not saying vote yes on 76. The other definition of lobbying, which counts as lobbying, is if you tell your legislator to vote no on Bill 76. So when we send out emails as Audubon saying, contact your legislator and tell them to vote no on this bill, that time that we spent sending out that alert, that is lobbying, because we're telling somebody to tell the legislator to vote yes or no on a bill. But outside of that, educational things don't count. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
No.
thanks.
Sorry for screaming babies in the background. They're getting to the end of their day.
Okay.
So I think that's the complete answer. I will make sure it's the complete answer.
Okay. Thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. Oh, the poor bugs. Okay, so if people are interested, I thought it would be good just to look at our legislature's website. So Megan or whoever, if you could just go to the website. This isn't a link, so I think you just have to go to the website and then share your screen. Oh, that's my Noah. He's dramatic. Can you hear him? I'm sorry. Yay. So this is our legislature's website. Some people find it very confusing, so I'm going to try to take some of the mystery out. So this is what you see when you just go to the website. So I think the best place to start is, Megan, in the upper right next to home, it says legislators. If you click that, there's a drop-down menu. And you can see find my legislator. If you click that, the second one, if you go to that, you can plug in your address for either the House or the Senate on the left or the right. And I mean, you don't have to choose your address, but you can if you want to. Or you can use my address if you, whatever. But if you use an address, it will show you who your House member is. And if you go to the other side that says the Senate, it will tell you who your senator is. So this is where I would start for everybody. If you don't already know who your House and Senate person is, and just hit search over to the right. Oops.
Might be a little slow. Oh, here we go.
Okay, so you have Rebecca Dow. You guys might remember her because she ran in the primary for the Republican nomination for governor. She's what I would call a moderate Republican, and she has been in the legislature. She has actually voted for a couple of our bills that we've worked on. So she's a good person to talk to. I don't know that much about her, and I don't know kind of what drives her. And I also think maybe she isn't coming back. Is that true? I think she might not be coming back. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna turn on the light because now I see really dark. Hold on. Okay. Oh, but now there's bright lights in your face. Okay. So yeah, so you can go to that drop down menu and you can go to the Senate. You're probably Saya, but let's just make sure.
Yes. See, come on.
Well, you guys get the idea. This is how you find your representative and your senator. And as you saw with Rebecca Dow, like once you have that up, it shows you all their contact information. So it shows you their email address that they prefer. It shows you their phone number. A lot of people actually list, like, look, she like lists her home phone number. A lot of legislators do that. They'll list like Gmail accounts if they don't want to check their NM Legis website. So you can find like whatever their preferred contact info is. Not all of them do that. Some of them just have their Capitol phone and their NM Legis email, but there's at least contact information for everybody up there and you can see what they look like. So that's a good start. If you go all the way up to the top again, if you go to legislators again and show the drop down menu, you don't have to click anything, but you can see what's available here. So you can go to the leadership and you can see the leadership like I showed you, but they probably have more because they probably have committee chairs. If you click House or Senate, it's the whole House and the whole Senate, every member. If you click on each member, it'll tell you like what area of the state they're in, that kind of thing. If you go up to the top again to legislation, so this can be a little complicated, and you don't have to click anything again, but this is where if you know the bill that you're looking for, you can find the legislation by number. So that's like if we send out an alert that says HB 51 has been introduced in the House, you can click find legislation. If you want to get dorky about it and read the whole bill, you can find the bill by that number. And it'll give you like a year. So you'll be able to say like 2023 HB 20, whatever it is. And it'll pop up with the language of the bill if you want to see it. You can also do it for any bill for all time, for all of history. So if you want to find old bills, you can find it that way too. If you want to find the find legislation by sponsor button, that's where like say you want to look at all the bills your legislator is sponsoring this session. You can do that. Or you can click last year if you want to see all the bills that she sponsored last year. Find legislation by keyword is real great. Like say you want to know every bill next session that comes up about climate change. You could search climate at the end of next session or even climate change in quotes, and it'll find you every bill that has that in the bill. So it can be really helpful. I down a little further, it'll like the bill finders and daily bill lookers, those are updated every day of the regular session. So if you're looking for like what committee a bill is in that day, you can use those, but that gets like a little complicated. So then the next tab over, committees up at the top. So this is where you can access all the committees. So you'll see on the right, it says interim committees. So those are all the committees that are made up of House and Senate members that meet during the year, all over the state. And the ones on the left, you'll see the House committees during the session and the Senate committees during the session. If you click on one, like click on Senate Conservation, you can click on it and it'll show you, if you go scroll down a little bit. So if it was meeting under agenda, it would say when it was meeting and the agenda for that day. So it would tell you, if you click on this during the session, it would tell you what bills they're going to hear that day or what bills they should publish them 2 or 3 days in advance, but sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And then you'll see at the bottom all of the committee members in that committee. So if you have a bill that's going to Senate Conservation and you want to email all the committee members or you want to call all the committee members, they're all right here for you and you can contact them if you need to. And it's especially good to know because some of those committee members might be your legislator, and then that's really helpful. Because if your legislator is on a committee that's hearing a bill that you're interested in, they're more likely to listen to you because you're their constituent. So if you go back up, sorry to have to do it this way.
Okay.
If you go to what's happening, that's the tab I actually use the most. So sorry, my dog is obsessed with my cat and she's running around the bed. It's always something. So this is where like the interim committee calendar and the session calendars are. So that's kind of good to know during the year. And then if you scroll down a little bit, these are the interim committees that are still meeting over the next month. They only publish their agenda a couple weeks in advance-ish, but like click the radioactive and hazardous materials committee that's meeting in 10 days. Like it'll show you like they're hearing about the proposed green amendment and they're hearing about uranium mining. And if you click those links, it'll take you to any handouts that the committee is going to get about that thing. So everything is available online and you can kind of see what they're going to do. And I don't know where that one is. Once you get to November, usually all the meetings are in Santa Fe, but it's still in Santa Fe. Okay. So we can go back to where we were. We're almost done with this little tour. If you go to webcast, I guess that's the best thing. Oh, wait, I want to see one more thing about. We'll go back to what's happening in a minute or now. That's fine. During the session. No, it's okay. Click the what's happening again.
Okay.
So, we're on it. So on here on the what's happening page, it doesn't say it right now because we're not in session, but during the session, if you go to the what's happening page, it will tell you everything that's happening that day at the Capitol. And so it'll have like all the committee agendas and it'll have the House floor agenda and it'll have the Senate floor agenda. So if you're trying to track a bill, you can see if it's going to be heard in committee. And they usually, like I said, publish it a couple days in advance. And so like Senate Conservation, for example, always meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so on Mondays, they'll usually post the agenda for that week. It's subject to change, of course, because it's the legislature. But basically, you'll know if a bill that you're interested in is going to come up in Senate Conservation that week, because under this What's Happening tab, it'll have the agendas for the standing committees. That was all I was going to say, which aren't there right now because we're not in session, but they would be if we were. Okay, and then I think it's just the next tab over where it just says New Mexico Legislature. So here, everything at the New Mexico, I mean, this is fine the way it is now, but everything at the legislature is webcast. And now since COVID, they're usually doing a hybrid system where they're allowing public comment through Zoom in addition to being in person. And so here's where you can see all of the webcast stuff. So, and you can also watch anything from the past. So it'll say like new recordings. You can go, don't do this, Megan, but like up here on the left, you can go to calendar and you can find like any date from since they started webcasting 8 years ago or whatever it was. And you can rewatch anything you want to watch. And so, but when something is currently playing, it will play in this, there will be a link to it in this main screen where it says now playing, which nothing is playing right now because they're not webcasting anything, but if they were, you could go to this and you could actually participate in public comment through that link if you wanted to. So that's also helpful. I think that's it. That's the main parts of that website, unless people have questions. I know I did that very quickly. Sorry.
No, that website's really neat. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's not always the most user-friendly, but like everything you really need is on there. And if you combine that with like, I'm sure everybody gets like a million listservs and advocacy things. I mean, if you combine it, you'll kind of have a good handle on what's going on. I feel like I'm running out of time, so I feel like I should keep going. Let's keep going.
Judy, there's a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Hold on.
The question, do you have to sign
Oh.
up for the comment?
So this is really freaking annoying, and I don't like the way this is shaking out. And that's the reason I hesitated when we were talking about the webcast, is different committees are doing this a little differently. And it's kind of up to the committee chair how they run public comment, which is really irritating because it's not a standardized practice and it should be. So if you're in person, you do not have to sign up in advance. So if you go to the committee and you're there and you want to raise your hand and speak in favor of a bill, you never have, or against a bill, whatever, you don't have to sign up in advance. If you want to do it via Zoom, it just depends on which committee it is. So some of the committees are running their webcasts through like a Zoom webinar. And in order to participate, you have to have like the participant link to the webinar and not just watch it on the webcast. You have to like be in the webinar. And so for them to give that link to someone, you have to sign up in advance and say you want to say something. So they have been giving it like 24 hours or something to tell them that you're going to want to say something. Other people have just let people raise their hand. It just depends. Like, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question perfectly. It's been really annoying. Like Liz Stefanikson, who runs Senate Conservation, who I love, she's been making people do it in advance so that they can like have the webinar link that lets them participate, you know, because there's different kinds of Zoom webinars and other webinars. And if you just click the webcast, then you're just watching what's happening in the room, you know, so that's not a way to like actually participate. You have to be in the Zoom to participate, you know what I mean? And so different ones are just doing it differently. Some committee chairs will just let you raise your hand in the Zoom and talk, and they'll just call on people and unmute you. And some of them they're making you say in advance. So it's
Okay.
but if you go in person, you have no problem. But for people in Silver City, it's hard to get up there. So
Thanks.
sorry, it's not a good answer. I think they kind of
It
were
is
just,
the answer now.
I
so-
know. I mean, I think they were kind of just winging it during COVID like everybody else was. And this was sort of where they landed.
All right.
Let the committee chairs decide and everybody does something different. So
Okay.
Can you all see the cranes flying? Okay, let me,
Not yet.
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna stop and then restart. I think that's the easiest.
Cranes.
All good.
Okay, cranes.
okay. I think all we have to do is a synopsis. Okay, we can skip this. We already talked about it. Let's just go to the next one. Oh, well, I put this on because there are other things you can do if you can't go in person. But we can skip this too. People can just read it.
Okay.
Okay, this is what I wanted to do. So I did just want to give like a little bit of a synopsis of the things that we've worked on the last couple of years and what's coming up. I think I want to start with conservation funding, even though it's the second piece of this slide. So conservation funding is something we've been working on for 4 years, like the conservation community in general. So New Mexico is one of the only states that doesn't have dedicated revenue to conservation. So what that means is a lot of our conservation project or programs at state agencies, it either has to be just part of the regular agency budget, or they have to ask for special appropriations in order to fund the program. So it's not like we just have a dedicated source of revenue going to like habitat restoration. There are habitat restoration programs at our state agencies, but they don't get like regular funding through the budget. They have to like ask each year and say, we need $100,000 to do this restoration project. And like the legislature has to approve it. So there's no like consistent revenue stream for things like that for a lot of the programs that we have in the state. So one example is the River Stewardship Program, which does riparian area restoration projects, like doesn't get funding in our regular budget. And so when the River Stewardship Program needs money, some legislator has to champion that and get them a special appropriation like each year in the budget. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So like that program sometimes has money and sometimes it doesn't. And that's true for a lot of programs at the state, which is stupid. And so what a lot of states have done is they've figured out a way to just have like a conservation revenue stream. So some of them have like a portion of their gross receipts tax goes to conservation programs. Some of them have like a backpack tax, which is a tax on outdoor recreation equipment. And some states have a trust fund where the interest from that fund goes to whatever programs they want to fund. And New Mexico doesn't have any of that stuff. And so for the last 4 years, we've been working on trying to figure out how to do that. You might remember that last year, the governor tried to do a GO bond, which is a general obligation bond, which would have been a bond that went to the voters to like approve a loan for funding some of those programs, which was not what we were working on and didn't really seem like the best way to go, but that was what she wanted to do. But what we've been working on for the last 4 or 5 years is doing a kind of trust fund. And so after a lot of negotiation, we've had some bills in the past that haven't gone. But after a lot of negotiation, I think everybody's on the same page this year. So this is actually something that I think is going to happen now. This is like a miracle, but all the conservation groups, like the whole range of conservation groups, ag, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, the Landowners Alliance, all the state agencies, the governor, and a bunch of legislators are all on board with the same program and the same structure. So hopefully what will happen in this session is that we're going to take $350 million. I mean the legislature, not me. The legislature is going to take $350 million, put it in a trust fund. So this will be like from the surplus that we have, partially because of COVID, partially because of extra oil and gas money, partially because it's federal funds. And that's going to be set aside just for funding 10 conservation-oriented programs that don't have regular funding. And we're going to just use the interest, and it's up in the air. The only thing up in the air is whether we make it an expendable trust, which would mean it could get spent down a little bit over time, the principal, or whether it would be a true trust that just uses the interest. But either way, what it would do is generate something in the range of $15 to $30 million a year, depending on whether we spend part of the principal or not, to 10 programs that, like I said, don't have regular funding in our budget. So it would go to, I'm not going to list them all because I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but it would go to Soil and Water Conservation Districts, which do a lot of restoration programs, go to the River Stewardship Program, it would go to the Outdoor Recreation Department, it would go to Game and Fish for endangered species work, and now I can't remember the others. 6 others. But it would be a huge, huge, huge win. And if we did this, it would be the biggest trust fund in the West for conservation. So it would make New Mexico like a huge leader in conservation funding. So I'm very sure that all of you will hear about that from Audubon and from whatever other conservation organizations you're part of, because we're all working together on it. So it's a really, really, really cool thing. And it's just like amazing that everyone agreed. And so it's sort of like in these final negotiating places now. That's one that's going to be bipartisan. So Senator Peter Wirth, who's the Senate Majority Leader, who was on our little slide earlier, and Senator Steve Neville up in Farmington are going to co-sponsor it. So it's awesome and it'll be really great. So that's cautious good news until it passes, which, you know, as we've noted, who knows what's going to happen. So that's really cool. Water's another big thing that we've been working on this year. I don't know if anybody heard, but the governor set up a water and infrastructure task force. She wanted to get the state engineer's office to deliver to her like the highest water priorities for the agency. And to do that, they put together a task force of like 20 or 30 stakeholders from around the state, some of which were agencies and some of which were just people. And Audubon got the only NGO seat, which was really cool. So I've been splitting the task force responsibilities with Paul Tashin, who some of you probably know is our freshwater conservation director. So he's more the sciencey person and I'm more the policy person. And so we've sort of split the duties that way. But some really good recommendations have come out of that task force, which just finalized its recommendations. So that has funding for the Strategic Water Reserve in it. And Liz Stefanik's, who's a senator who chairs the Conservation Committee, she's going to sponsor a bill to get the Strategic Water Reserve a lot of money. But I think even if that bill doesn't go through, there'll be some money for the Strategic Water Reserve in the regular budget. And so that's a program that allows the state to purchase and lease water for compact compliance, but also for endangered species protection. So it allows the state to sort of move water around a little more freely so that some water can be left in the rivers for species that need water. Because our current system sort of incentivizes using every last drop and taking it out. So this is a way that we have to leave some water in the river. So that's good. I guess the only other thing I'll get into now, because we're running late and I could talk about all this forever. I told Megan, I was like, I'm going to only talk for 30 minutes. I'll be really short. And now, of course, that I'm into it, we're going to go over time. I'm sorry. I put landscape planning bills in here because the thing I've been working on for like over a decade is, I don't know how much people know about NEPA at the federal level, but NEPA is the federal law that makes federal agencies have to do environmental impact statements before they permit large projects. So it just means that like they have to look at what they're doing and consider possible alternatives that might have less impact. So you have to be like, what would our project do if we did it this way? Would it hurt fewer species? Would it be better for climate? You know, it's like a look before you leap sort of thing. And we don't have a law like that at the state level. So 17 states do, but we don't. So our state agencies, I don't know if everybody's looked at a land jurisdiction map of New Mexico, but in a lot of New Mexico, especially in the places where we have oil and gas, it's like checkerboarded. So you have this teeny little section of federal land next to a teeny little section of state land. And so they're doing NEPA on the pieces of federal land when they permit oil and gas, for example. So they're thinking about what they're doing, but on the state pieces that are right next to them, they don't have to. So the state is just permitting all kinds of things without thinking about what they might be doing to species or climate or public health or anything, because we don't have a state law that requires them to do it. And for a long time, this has bothered me because it just seems like when you're talking about nature exists like in watersheds, not like in land jurisdiction lines. And so the decisions that are being made on state land are affecting, the rivers and all the things, even if it's not on state land. And so for a long time, I've been thinking about ways to make state agencies kind of have to make more comprehensive decisions or make their decisions more slowly about big projects. And so one really cool thing that actually worked a couple of years ago, I have tried to get state NEPA laws passed here before and been very shut down very quickly by Democrats. So I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon. So I've been trying to think of other ways to try to make that happen. And a few years ago, we took sort of the first little step about making good decisions as a state. And I was able to get the Environmental Database Act passed in 2021. So this is this really cool thing. I should put the website in the chat. But we created a website at UNM that is a state-based map database of all the environmental and public health data. So it used to be that if you wanted to figure out like what was going on in a certain spot, you'd have to dig through a bunch of different agency websites and try to piece it all together yourself, which is impossible. And like each state agency wasn't looking at what other state agencies were doing because all their information was sort of siloed in each website. So this is a single map that houses all the data layers. So it has like all the oil and gas data, endangered species data, like air permits, water permits, and then it has public health data. So it has like child asthma rates, it has poverty levels by zip code, all the things. It has a ton of information. And it's all on one map, and you can see all the layers together. And what it does is you can register for free, and it's free and open to the public. And I'll put the website over there. But you can actually run reports on it. And so you can either pick a point on the map and say, I want to report within 5-mile radius of this point, or you can draw a shape on the map of your project or the project you're interested in or whatever. And it'll spit back out a report to you telling you all the resources that are in that area. And it'll even say to you like, oh, you might have an endangered species in this project. You should go talk to Game and Fish. And it's such a cool website. And if you click on each point on the website, like if you clicked on an oil and gas well on the website, it would tell you like who owns the well, when it expires, all the things. So right now it's just a website, but we're teaching the agencies and the public how to use it. And so my hope is that the agencies will use it when they permit things to kind of get a more comprehensive understanding of what's going on in their project area, but also that the public can use it to like tell agencies what's going on in their project area. So it was kind of my first little step, not necessarily towards the state NEPA, but at least towards having more comprehensive information out there. So my hope is that at some point we can get the agencies to either voluntarily or not voluntarily run a report on that website before they permit large projects and post it for the public. It's kind of my like next step idea, but that's kind of a long-term sort of overarching goal I have, is trying to make better decisions in the state. So I'm really proud of it and excited. Oh, there's a cat here. That was bound to happen too. This is Munchkin. She's 17. So yeah, those are kind of some of the things, you know, we work on a bunch of other things and smaller projects, and there's always things that pop up during the session that you either want to kill or have them pass. And I don't know what those things will be this session, but I'm sure there will be some. So I might just stop and see if there's questions. I'm trying to see, I think there is a question in the chat. Oh, no, there isn't. Okay, let me see if I can remember this website. It is, oh, the other thing about the database is we did a couple of webinars. Sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. And the webinars kind of go through and show how to use it. There's the website. And the webinars, I don't know if they're up yet, but they should be posted on the database so that you can watch a tutorial about how to use the database. So it should be up there. And maybe I'll just stop now for questions because it's 7:02.
So that conservation funding trust you mentioned, so that's going to come back up in this legislative process and hopefully be signed off on. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is the first year, like we had a bill in 2020 and then a bill in 2021, and we didn't do it this past year. Sorry, she's not trainable.
Yeah.
I've had her since she was 6 weeks old. It's ridiculous. Yeah, but this is the first year that we've had kind of internal struggles among the conservation community about which programs should be funded and what it should go to. And a lot of people wanted to see, land acquisitions in there. And it was like a lot of discussion and people had a lot of opinions about a lot of things. So suffice it to say, this is the first year that the agencies, conservation, and the landowners groups are kind of really all on the same page. And the governor has said that she wants to do it, and Senator Worth said he wants to do it. So I don't know that it's going to work this year, but I think it has the best shot it's ever had.
That's
And
amazing.
we have a ton of money. So
That's a really hopeful news. That's really cool to hear.
yeah, so we'll update people. Senator Neville, who's the Republican in Farmington, who's going to co-sponsor it, already opened a file on it, which means he's told Legislative Counsel Service to start drafting a bill. So, and EMNR, the Energy and Minerals and Natural Resources Department, is kind of spearheading the effort for the agencies, and they've been working with all of us. And they did a presentation to the Water and Natural Resources Interim Committee in September with some of us about the proposal. So it's all kind of out there, and we all have a meeting with the Legislative Finance Committee on Monday to talk about whether $350 million is actually not a crazy number, which would be amazing if it wasn't a crazy number.
Wow.
Originally, we were talking about 200 million. So, but it was the legislators and the governor pushed it up to 350. So.
Any other questions out there?
I have a question for Judy. If we wanted to follow what you're following, is there a place on the Audubon site that is a good direct link for that? Or
So you mean just what I'm working on this
yeah,
session?
like you mentioned some of the under those 4 categories, if we wanted to follow what's happening.
Yeah. So
take action.
I think so. We're redoing the Audubon Southwest website right now, and they just asked me to do a policy page. So I think there will just be a policy page up there. But what I also do is I usually do a pre-session kind of preview webinar kind of thing. It's usually for the board, but I think we've been opening it to members lately. So I'll make sure that the chapters get that. And then I also always put something in the newsletter during the session. And then what we've been doing the last 2 sessions, Steve Prager, I don't know if anybody's met him, but he's in Tucson now. But he's really great at doing targeted alerts. So the last couple of years, we've gotten really good at, if a bill of ours is going to be in a committee, we can email our Audubon membership who are in those legislators' districts and say, a bill is coming to your legislators committee tomorrow or on Thursday, and here's their email address. And so we do those targeted little alerts as the bills go through. And then, like I said, just the newsletter, and I do a pre and post session update, but I'll make sure that the chapters get those more than they have been. I'm not great at outreach. It's not something I'm particularly good at. And so I need to get better at it.
Need to ask more questions.
I just appreciate all this information, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. I feel like I've talked your ears off. Sorry.
No, this has really been good information. And it's been a long time since we had information like this in a program. So it's good, well-rounded stuff for us.
What do you usually have?
A whole range
Sciencey things.
Sometimes it's really bird related. Sometimes it's travel log programs. We've had a fish program. We've had,
cool.
Oh gosh, it's run the gamut. But Paul has talked with us. That was probably the last one that, related to policy. Yeah, a whole range. Hey,
Hey,
go for it.
I absolutely screwed up. I just arrived thinking that this was starting at 7.
Oh,
But did anybody ask about whether or not Audubon Southwest does lobby days?
Oh, yeah.
Or
Thank you.
yeah, lobby
for asking
days or
that.
sort of what sort of lobbying chapters can legally do, or how that should be framed when speaking with our legislators?
Yeah, so those are two separate questions, and we sort of talked about your second one, but we didn't talk about your first one. But I'm going to talk about your second one first again. So, I mean, I think different attorneys have different interpretations of what lobbying, how much lobbying you can do, and like how much wiggle room there is. But what I was always told was that even 501c3s can spend 20% of their time lobbying and be okay. So that's kind of always what I have in mind. Most people don't like to get up to that point because then it gets a little scary, but a little bit of lobbying is okay, even if you're a 501c3. But also, the only things that are officially lobbying are telling a legislator, vote yes on this bill, or saying, go tell your membership to tell their legislator to go vote yes on this bill. So like if you're referencing specific legislation, advocating for a yes or no vote, like that's lobbying. But if you're just educating a legislator or telling them like, hey, this is a huge problem in Silver City, this is a thing that would help it, that's not lobbying. That's just talking to your legislator. So I think you can go talk to your legislators about things that you are concerned about, even if, I don't know, I think you can do it. And also, as a citizen and not as your Audubon chapter, you can certainly go ask your own legislator to vote yes on a bill, and you're not lobbying because you're just being a citizen advocate. So I should have said that before. But we are going to do lobby days. So we've done it once before. It's been weird because of COVID. And like one legislative session was totally online, and then the other one was like mostly online. And now we're back to like in person, although they're still going to webcast and do Zoom for their committee meetings. But we are going to do at least one lobby day and maybe two. So I think we're going to do the first one. I don't think we have a date yet. I was just talking to Susie about it, but kind of towards the beginning of the session, like the first week or two. And we did it the first year I was there, where like I took a group around the Roundhouse and took them to their legislators' offices and showed them like how to find them, and then took them onto the Senate floor and we went to committees and stuff. So I think we are going to do that again. And I think that will go out to the chapters. I'll make sure it does. And I'd like to do two and not just one, because this is a longer session. It's a 60-day session. So. Record it if you want to watch it, since you missed it.
Yeah, we just came in and John was like, what's this $350 million? And I was like, oh, I'm sure they're gonna cover it soon.
You're
But
gonna get
you don't have to
$350 million for conservation. It's gonna be great.
Cool. I'll watch the recording.
Eleanor, did you have a question?
Well, I just got through reading an article about landscape water that what Tucson's doing. And when I got on, because I forgot about it till 10 minutes till 7. But you had something up on this that said landscape was one of the things you were going to work on. And I'm hoping that's what you're going to push. That what they're doing is harvesting rainwater.
Oh.
And it's really helping them a lot.
You should send that to me. That wasn't what I was talking about.
Well,
but I'm interested in that.
I'll see if I can. It was on my phone.
Okay.
But it was and I
could probably look it up too.
I can tell you who put it up was Fitzsimmons, the fellow that's the political artist, comic. he used to be in the Arizona paper there in Tucson. And I just love him because he's on the same side we are, and he really nails these politicians that are not. Anyway,
No,
I'll
that
see
sounds
if I can
awesome.
find it.
I can try to look it up too.
Yeah, well, let me see what I can do about it. It was put out by the BBC, the article.
Okay, I can find it.
So they spelled all the words funny. But it was really fascinating to read. And I kind of knew that was some of those things were going on, but it talked a lot more about exactly how helpful it's been to them. Because like this one person started harvesting curb water.
Oh,
And it was really helping their plants, and it really wasn't legal when she started doing it, but now they're allowing it. And so it's not just going off into nowhere land, so to speak.
yeah.
And I know my son was doing a lot of it in Tucson, and he really had a terrific garden in the backyard from rainwater harvest. So I think we should push it.
I just found it.
Pardon me?
I just found the article.
Oh, good.
So I'll
Good.
pull it up and
Yeah.
I'll read it tomorrow.
Yeah, it's kind of lengthy, but it was good. I didn't put myself on camera. I don't like sitting there on camera. I feel stupid. So I
I always do
apologize.
too.
Yeah, well, I'm old enough to be able to get away with it. That's what I say. Yeah, but it's nice to see other people are on. I'm glad.
Yeah.
And my cat.
Yeah. All right. Well, any other questions anybody has or discussions or?
Well, can I get this article? I mean, this session, will it be available to watch later? Since I missed the first 50 minutes.
Yeah, Heidi is recording it, so we'll put it on both our Facebook page maybe and the YouTube, or we'll put a link to the YouTube.
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear the rest of it.
yeah, there were a couple of you that were a little late, so that's why we do it. Luckily, Heidi remembered it. I always forget to press record if I'm doing it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know when I'm on the, well, of course I wasn't there, so I couldn't have done it anyway for myself.
Yeah. All right. Well, anybody else? I think we covered a lot. Gosh, I'm really interested in some of these topics now. I think we all would be interested in getting more info on like real time
Yeah.
and
I'm determined to do a better job this year about that.
I think people would eat it up.
Just not my strong suit, being like, oh yeah, I should write an article about that. It's like I need to be reminded to do it, but I'll do it.
Yeah. And also, keeping us posted on what we can do.
Yeah.
When it's needed is super great.
Well, you're an active group.
Mhm.
This Audubon chapter here is very active.
Yeah.
So, good audience.
We like to help out where we can.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on around here that always amazes me, and I'm happy to see it.
Okay, well, maybe we'll wrap up if there's nobody else. But Judy, thanks so much for informing us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And can we email you if we have more specific questions? Okay.
Yeah. It's just, you can share my email with your list if you want, or I could just say it. Or it's at the beginning of the PowerPoint too.
Yeah. It's just your full Judy.Calman.
It's just Judy.Calman at Audubon.org.
At Audubon.org. Perfect. Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight, and glad to see you all, and have a great weekend, I guess.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Yes, thank you. Same to you all.
Yeah. Bye, Judy. Thanks.
Bye, thanks.